Hey, welcome to Lunch with EFI, which is lunch on the East Coast each Wednesday with a motley assembly of our crew. Today, we have three topics for you, as we always do each week: an appetizer, a main dish, and dessert. The appetizer is about bad medical research. The main dish is about bad false claims in attacking the Arizona ESA, and then dessert is the bad news that students are disappearing in Chicago. So it's all bad. It's a real downer of a show. I don't know. You may not even want to watch it. It's such a downer. But I'm joined here by my cheerful colleagues who will make it all worthwhile. So why don't we kick it off with our appetizer, which is my dish for today's lunch, which is blaming the weather. This was a study that was in JAMA Network Open, which is a leading journal from a respectable medical association. The Journal of the American Medical Associations, JAMA, their online journal called Network Open. And the claim in the study was that the stress of racism contributes to early death in the Black community. Okay. So racism is stressful and it weathers. So the reason why this is blaming the weather is that this phenomenon is known as weathering, that the cumulative stress of being subject to racism weathers Black people and causes them to die earlier. And so they had a panel, would not followed over time, but just a sample in St. Louis, where they administered a few surveys that they put together into an index that they called the cumulative lifespan stress measure. And then they had measures of whether people died younger. Okay. And then they also took measures of that are correlated with stress by taking mouth swabs and looking for a C-reactive protein, which is an indicator of stress. Okay, so they find that the Black subjects in their sample in St. Louis reported more cumulative stress in their life, according to the 5 measures they combined into their index, and that it also that they had higher stress in their C-reactive, as indicated by C-reactive protein at that moment, and that they, in that study, tended to die at a younger age. Okay, so first, the obvious problems, which is that these things may all be correlated with each other, but it's unclear what's causing what, or if something else is causing all of them. So, for example, the Black subjects in this study also were more likely to have a variety of health problems, none of which were controlled in this study. None, except for BMI. They did control for BMI, but that was the only covariate, and they don't show it. So
what does that mean, Jay, to control for covariates? For
our
listeners
okay,
who didn't advanced statistics.
Sure, maybe, and we know actually on average that that Black people are more likely to have cardiovascular disease, more likely to have diabetes, and those things lead to earlier death, right? They kill people, and so it is perfectly plausible that having a serious chronic disease is stressful. And that having a serious chronic disease also kills you. But it doesn't mean the stress killed you. The disease killed you. And it's even worse because in their 5 measures of cumulative lifespan stress are a variety of questions about whether you have a chronic illness. So in fact, they're asking them, do you have a chronic illness? Calling that stress, and then saying stress causes death, when actually disease causes death. So, I mean, this is like a great grad school trick. These are the cheap tricks that people learn to, how to cheat when they're grad students. And one of them is you create an index and you call it something, like you call it, education freedom or something, and then you include it in it things that are not that, but you called it that. So now you get to walk around and say that education freedom causes this, that, or the other thing, right? This is not necessarily good research. Maybe it's like think tank research, which is okay, but is it in, a leading journal? Is it something that will decide, how it is that we run our medical system? And so here, besides the fact that this is so obviously a weak study, there's the other thing that I have to tell you after increasingly reading medical research, after having spent a lot of time reading education research and thinking, oh, well, education research is lousy because, ed schools are lousy and, it's just a particular curse of the education field. It is not. As it turns out, the medical research out there is quite often as lousy. Like, it's shocking how bad the research methods are in top medical journals, cited by leading associations making important policy decisions. You think it's science, you think lives are on the line, so it has to be good. It's just not true. It's like one of these shocking COVID moments where you realize, oh, the grown-ups actually don't know what they're doing and aren't in charge, or they are in charge, but they don't know what they're doing.
And this reminds me of Thomas Sowell, right? So he had a great book on intellectuals, and he distinguished, what makes an intellectual versus other smart people who have various careers, right? So he says, somebody like a doctor or an engineer, he doesn't count as an intellectual, because for him, an intellectual is somebody whose success is determined by whether or not they can persuade other smart people that they're right. But there's no real world consequences besides that. So with a doctor, you have a patient that either lives or dies. With an engineer, your building either stands or falls. So you might think that medical researchers are more like the doctor, because at the end of the line, there are lives at stake. But actually, it doesn't reflect on them directly. Whether they publish their paper or not doesn't directly save or kill a patient. And so that problem with
doctors are they're smart. Doctors are smart.
Yeah.
And they're very successful people, but they've gotten ahead in a very competitive field to a large degree because of compliance. That is, they do the things they're told. They tell the teacher the answer that the teacher expects to hear. So they're selected and rewarded increasingly for compliance. The medical system rewards compliance. There's a lot of, you go through a checklist, the insurance companies want you to do things, the hospitals want you to do things. If you don't do those things, you get in trouble. So your compliance is really important. And so good, smart doctors are highly impressionable by whatever it is that the medical research tells them. So this does have real consequences, but
sure. But I mean, it doesn't have real consequences directly for the researcher, right? It's further down the line. The doctor-patient relationship is close, right?
Yeah.
When a person has an adverse health effect and they think it's because the doctor made a mistake, they blame the doctor. They don't blame the faceless researcher that published in a journal 3 years ago.
So I think actually it's even more, the accountability is more complicated and obfuscated than that, because, in medicine and in life, bad things happen even when you do the right thing. So doctors might be making right decisions and there's an adverse outcome, and doesn't mean the doctor did anything wrong. And in fact, in the grand scheme of things, ultimately, there's always an adverse outcome in healthcare, which is everyone eventually dies.
Yes.
So we haven't cured that. So there's always an adverse outcome eventually.
Right. But I'm talking about cases where they make a mistake. Okay. And
yeah, but you wouldn't know it. and here's
well,
the
there
whole side of it.
are lawsuits based on malpractice, right?
Yeah,
but I can't.
Not a very accountable system. Look,
sure.
The opposite is also true, which is that you can make the wrong decision and things still come out okay. Yeah. So that's how you have all these kind of quack remedies, people taking multivitamin mega doses, or thinking that if they take various organic supplements or something, that they're going to have improved health. And they could do these dumb things and it still comes out okay because, they continue living their lives. Even if it harmed them a little bit, they still kind of come out okay. Yeah. And so, because they continue living. And we don't know whether any bad thing is attributable to that intervention or would have happened anyway. And so, absent randomized controlled trials, it's really hard to know. Now, I have to tell you, there is good research in medicine that does do good stuff, just as there is good research in education that does good stuff. It's just shockingly less common than you might think. There are fewer practices in medicine are supported by randomized controlled trials than you realize, just as in education. Like the vast majority of practices in education have no randomized controlled trial to support them. We know that, and we think, oh, that's why education is a lousy field. The same is true of medicine. Other than pharmaceutical, drugs, the vast majority of medical interventions are not supported by an RCT.
Right.
So which doesn't necessarily mean they're bad, right?
Exactly. Like, right. There is the wisdom of experience. There is, and doctors are smart people and they have some good sense. Right. So I'm not saying the practice of medicine is terrible. I'm just saying the scientific basis for it is pretty terrible and a lot less strong than you might hope.
Right. So like I was saying, though, you may say that the accountability for individual doctors is imperfect, granted. But at least there's the threat of a malpractice lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. No one is suing the researcher who published some article several years ago, or suing the journal saying you shouldn't have run this, I had a negative health outcome. So the accountability system, even to the extent that it's not great for the doctors, far less great for the researchers.
I don't know. We're going to have to see with gender medicine how far the trial lawyers go. I mean, they're getting the hospitals and the doctors, but wait, I don't know. They might go after the medical associations that endorse these interventions as the standard of care. They might go after the research that recommended to those medical associations that this should be the standard of care. I don't know how far back they'll go. My guess is they'll go as far back as there is money.
Yeah, which is great. That's a form of accountability. And the fact is that those medical associations and hospitals and quack researchers abused their authority, and they're not the only ones to abuse their authority. Matt has a main dish today where a journalist is abusing his authority by making false claims of ESA abuse. So Matt, you want to tell us about this story?
Yeah, it's our old dear friend Craig Harris, who used to work for the Arizona Republic, and now works for a news station here in Phoenix. Craig is
Channel 12.
Channel 12. Craig seems to have made it his life's mission to spew out misleading and distorted research or journalism on school choice topics. Just a few sort of a greatest hits list, perhaps, because there's a lot more. Back in 2018, Craig did an analysis where he claimed that district students in Arizona perform better academically than students in Arizona charter schools. From a research methodology standpoint, I can tell you that if I were grading an undergraduate that turned this in as a paper, they would have gotten an F. But in addition to that, Matt Weinberg from Goldwater found all kinds of data errors, like, just egregious data errors, and that when he corrected them, actually the opposite result was found. And
where did Matt put that stuff up?
Oh, I can send you a link. Of course, the NAEP shows that 8th graders attending charter schools in Arizona score about 2 grade levels higher in both math and reading than the Arizona district students. Then, he followed that up with this classic above the fold front page story, breathlessly proclaiming that there was going to be a charter school apocalypse of closings in the near future. This was based on some research done by anti-charter school activists that let's just say they didn't understand basic accounting principles. So their claim was that these things were going to financially collapse. There were 544 charter schools at that time in Arizona. Now there's 570. Okay, so Craig has now switched his focus over to the ESA program and recently published a story where he claims that the misuse of funds rates in the Arizona Empowerment Scholarship Accounts Program, the ESA program, is 20%. Okay.
That means 20% of the dollars or the requested purchases by parents whose kids are eligible for these ESA accounts where they can use the money from that is publicly subsidized for the education of their kids, that a fifth of that is not used for something that is approved or allowed by the program.
Well, he does not analyze the dollars. He's looking at purchases. And this 20% claim is highly stylized. One might even call it synthetic. Okay. Because I sat down with the Arizona Department of Education yesterday. And what Craig did was to take a sample of purchases that the department had flagged for additional scrutiny. Right. So basically,
this isn't a random, audit where they're just taking random, so you can generalize.
No,
these are ones that are specifically flagged because they might be problematic
for additional scrutiny.
So, of the ones that might be problematic, a fifth, in fact, are.
Is that
yes. What it is?
So
right, but he's claiming it's 20% of the program.
Right, but it's 20% of the ones flagged as potentially. So another way to put 4%. It is 80% of the ones that are suspected of being problematic are in fact not problematic.
Well, it's even worse than that. So his problematic sample is 20% of the total. Okay. So of that, 20% was found to be inappropriate, which equals 20% of 20% by my Texas public school math, that's about 4%, right? But in addition to that, there's an additional problem is because many times when parents are submitting a receipt for compliance purposes or for reimbursement, they're sending in a receipt that has multiple items on it. Okay. So I can submit a receipt with multiple items on it, but only be seeking reimbursement for the one item.
Right. Right. So think of it this way. So people have an HSA, right? A health savings account. They go to CVS. They buy 10 things, 2 of which are eligible for their HSA. They then go home with this receipt that has 10 things on it. They submit to their HSA for reimbursement for the 2 eligible items. Craig Harris sees the receipt and says, oh, there's 8 things on here that are not eligible. And then he counts that as misspending, which is sloppy at best and dishonest at worst.
It's entirely inappropriate. And so 4% based on this analysis should be viewed as the ceiling. Actually, it's far lower than that, right? Now on Twitter, Craig has been,
and that's of transactions and not of dollars. It's almost
right. So that's another point. We know the percentages of funds that are going to what, like it's around 60% is going to tuition, right? That's none of this stuff. Okay, so if you kind of backwards engineer it to that, right, you're talking about a relatively low dollar number, right? Even in the worst case scenario. So 4% is the ceiling. the reality is that it's lower than 4% because of this multiple item receipt. And of course, the Arizona Department of Education is at pains to, when they don't want misuse of funds, right? And they have introduced a number of practices and new technologies to attempt to, to lower it as low as possible. But the funny thing about these critics is that they simultaneously will, try to grossly exaggerate misuse of funds in the ESA program, and yet they support programs that have a far higher misuse of funds that have been established
like
through
what?
careful study. Well, like
SNAP,
Medicaid and SNAP and unemployment insurance, right? All of these things have been formally studied, by which I mean something more than a big chief tablet and a crayon by a journalist. Okay.
Right. The Government Accountability Office shows that there's an average of 7% misspending across federal programs. And then with programs like the school breakfast and school lunch programs, it's like 16 to 20% misspending. So you don't see them going after those programs where this whole entire program is a tiny fraction of those programs, but it doesn't matter. It's clearly just this is a pretext for going after a program they don't like.
The good news when Medicare finds fraud and finds it at a higher rate than the ESA program has, people don't say, well, let's get rid of Medicare. They say, oh, well, why don't we crack down on that bad practice in Medicare, because Medicare is too important to waste, and so we want to preserve it. And the reason why that happens is because tons of people benefit from Medicare, including lots of powerful people who have a lot of political influence.
Right.
Is that also true of Arizona ESAs, or is it getting close?
Well, we're going to find out. We've got 100,000 people currently in the program. And
out of 100,000 kids, out of how many K-12 eligible age?
I think is that about a million, a little more than a million,
1.2 million total.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's going to be there's the opponents of ESAs are attempting a ballot initiative, which would severely restrict the program. It would roll back eligibility, so far fewer students are actually eligible for it. It would add a whole bunch of restrictions. It would make it a lot harder to use. And
people currently in it out of it.
Yes, it would kick people out of the program that are currently using the program. There's no grandfather clause or anything like that. And so
people aren't very good at politics, are they?
Fortunately not. Well, we'll find out. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this could be blocked. They could fail to get enough signatures. They could get enough signatures, but there could be some constitutional issues with the way they drafted the language. It might actually make it onto the ballot, but it might lose. So we will see. But this is going to be probably the biggest political test that the program has faced since it was enacted in. When it was enacted, Matt, 2012, I think, is when it went to effect.
And I imagine this reporter's project has nothing to do with the fact that there's this upcoming ballot initiative, right? They're completely unrelated events.
Yes, it's interesting that right after they file it, all of a sudden he has these stories ready to go.
Well, let's not go too far down the conspiracy thing. Like, Craig is always churning this nonsense out. It usually takes about 5 minutes of scrutiny to figure out how he's played whatever game
this time.
He's constantly doing it. So, and the bad guys
so
are.
You're saying it's not causal.
It might not be.
Okay.
We can't conclude that it is. Let's put it that way.
So speaking of how well, if only the government were to run everything, it would be very efficient and effective. Is that also true in Chicago?
No. As a matter of fact, what we're seeing is that students are fleeing the system. Our friend Daniel Buck from the American Enterprise Institute put this up yesterday. Since 2018, Chicago Public Schools added more than 6,000 employees while they lost 35,000 students, right? So part of this is just
well, they're just improving the system to attract them back, right?
Yes, sure. A part of this is very clearly the baby bust. It's also people moving out of blue states and especially blue cities. But a part of it too is parents that are moving their kids out of the failing public school system into charter schools or private schools. And so Chicago is losing a ton of students. And you might think they're losing all these students, they're losing the money associated with these students. Maybe it's time to reduce their staff, but no. Public schools are essentially a jobs program. And so they are constantly hiring
So you're
staff.
saying they're effective programs. They're accomplishing what they're intended to.
In that sense, right? So I think that parents think of them as, well, these are institutions, the purpose of which is to educate my child. Unfortunately, most of the people, it seems, that are actually operating these institutions have a very different mission. And we don't see any improvement in Chicago in terms of student performance. As a matter of fact, it's low and declining. And this is something that we see. They constantly are coming with their hands out saying, we need more money. Why? Our teachers are underpaid. Oh, if only we had enough money to pay the teachers, we would improve the quality. And so state legislators and voters, when they're asked to do a bond override, are constantly saying, yes, look at how poorly those teachers are paid. We really should do more. Let's override this bond. Let's give them more money. And what do the school administrators then do with that money? Buy other things, hire more staff, buy a new stadium, whatever it is. They put their money.
The biggest, frankly, the biggest cause of spending increase over the last several, half century is that we hired an army of additional teachers. So we did increase spending on teachers, just not for each teacher. We just hired more of them, right?
Yes.
A little bit like think tanks. They don't really pay that well, but they just keep hiring more of them, right?
Right.
Well, as a percentage of the total, teachers have been going down as a percentage.
I understand.
Right. It's more non-teaching staff that's being hired.
You look, this was the class size reduction push, which we don't hear too much about now, but the class size reduction push was we improve education if we hire more teachers and allegedly lower average class size, because then you get more personalized attention for your child. And so everyone imagines they'll get a personal chef, and he'll be like Emerald, and instead they get the fry guy, right? And they don't realize that there's this trade-off between the quantity of teachers and the quality of teachers. And so hiring, and part of that is because teacher pay does kind of stink.
Well, and unions would much rather have 2 dues-paying members who are lower paid than 1 higher-paid member who's only paying dues once.
In part because it's easier to steal a nickel from more people than a dime from one. And also because 2 people can vote twice, and in Chicago, maybe 4 times.
Right. But you can see here, look, since the 1970, you've got only an 8% increase in inflation-adjusted salaries for teachers on average, whereas the amount that is actually being spent in the school system on a per-pupil basis is going up 152%.
Some of that is non-teachers. Some of that is just more teachers. Right. We have had an explosion of non-teacher types. Lots of aides, assistants, administrators of various kinds, because schools have also expanded their mission to provide a very wide scope of services as well. Which the unions are also organizing, right? They also organize all of the social workers, the nurses, everyone.
Right. This is the Bigger Boulder. Remember that back in
Bigger Boulder, wraparound services.
Right. Yeah. The term teacher union is now a misnomer, right?
Right.
I know here in Arizona, teachers actually make up a minority of the membership of the Arizona Education Association. Right. They're actually a district employee union. They're not a teacher.
Well, they're not even that anymore, because they're also now expanding into organizing higher ed So graduate students, they're organizing, and just wait, I have a report coming on that. That's quite something.
Good. Yeah.
But they're also getting into allied health fields. And so they're organizing OTs, PTs, people who work in hospital systems too.
Well, this is one of the things they want to bring those, as a part of the community school model. They want to have a whole bunch of healthkare professionals on site.
Didn't Mackenzie Scott just give a boatload of money to the community school effort? Is it Communities in Schools or something? Or is the name of the nonprofit that she gave a lot of money to? And she's very smart because she was married to someone who made a lot of money.
Yes.
So Jason, from this data, like how much of the enrollment decline is not because people are leaving the Chicago public schools, but because they're leaving Illinois altogether?
So yeah, I don't have that, but we certainly do know that Illinois generally and Chicago specifically are places where you've got a lot of people who are fleeing. As well they should, before the financial apocalypse catches up with them. They keep pushing it back a little, but they're running out of gimmicks. I mean, they even Mayor Johnson sold the rights to collect revenue from parking meters.
Oh no, that was before him. That occurred before. Yeah.
Oh, that was before him.
Emanuel did a lot of
that. Was yeah, but I mean, they sold it for like 100 years. I think.
Yeah, the Saudis are collecting the parking meters from Chicago. And by the way, the technological innovations that result when private equity owns tolls and parking meters, it all becomes like automated, very efficient. It's like used to be you'd have to dig through your car to try to find a coin to stick in the machine. Now it's like you just tap your card against something and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
You go on an app, you put in the number for your spot, it'll just take the money automatically. It's very efficient.
I mean, you just wonder how does this play out? Like you literally got a school system that is bleeding students and adding employees. And that's generally like nationwide on average, that would be true to some extent. Not to the same extent we see in Chicago, obviously, but
what's the saying in the development business is, if you borrow, a small amount of money, you owe the bank, and if you borrow a really large amount of money, you own the bank.
Right.
Right. So maybe this is smart politics. Like, go big, right? If you're going to fail, you want to fail so catastrophically that you have to be bailed out.
I think this is all, I mean, even assuming some linearity, which we cannot, right? Like the reality of what's happening in some of these places, like New York, like Chicago, right?
Like California,
is that they're bleeding people, right? And wealth. It's bleeding out. Right, it's not happening.
Well, don't worry, Mayor Mamdani has a solution for that.
Does he?
It's never been tried before, but what he's going to do is raise taxes on the wealthy.
Yeah,
and they can't go anywhere.
They can't go anywhere. Sure,
they have no resources to leave. How could they possibly leave for a beautiful sunny beach somewhere else?
I mean, apparently there are people, very wealthy people, already moving out of California just because of some ballot initiative from a wealth tax. From what I read. So yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of that Hemingway quote where, how did you go bankrupt? Like 2 ways, like gradually and then all of a sudden. I mean, I think we got a long glide path for gradually here for sure. When and if all of a sudden that happens, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot about this.
This is accountability. That's back to the original theme is accountability is healthy. It makes people recognize, learn from, and recover from mistakes.
Yeah.
So, and often that occurs before complete catastrophe, right? Before collapse. So we shouldn't project collapse forever into, catastrophe. The most likely thing is people are going to recognize mistakes and adapt.
It seems to be going pretty slowly. Did you know, for instance, there are more people with finance jobs in the state of Texas than the state of New York? Like right this very second.
Well, I mean, a couple of decades ago, the back offices of all the Wall Street firms moved to Florida. I mean, at that time, they had to trade on Wall Street, but they didn't have to have all their support networks.
Yeah, I know.
In New York, and now they don't even have to trade in New York at all. So
it's all happening. I mean, you've seen these projections for the next reapportionment after the 2030 census. California -4, Florida and Texas +4, Illinois
which is good, right?
-2.
I mean, their ability to extract resources from the federal government to bail them out decreases as they have fewer electoral college votes and fewer representatives in Congress, right?
Right. Yeah, I know, but you don't see a whole lot of evidence that people in these places are waking up to their dilemma. And
I don't know. History tells us that taboo choice works, right? People move, impose accountability on political systems that go astray, and that it corrects.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't mean that those places come back strong. Some of those places just become irrelevant. Like maybe New York doesn't, once upon a time, Buffalo was a very important city,
Right.
It was, once upon a time, Albany was a happening place. Now these are not really happening places. They don't matter very much.
Once upon a time, Detroit had the highest GDP per person in the world.
Right.
Yeah. Now it's a smoldering ruin of its former self.
That is actually even starting to come back. There are reports.
Yeah, I've heard that story too. Good for them. I mean, I hope it does.
As they say, things that can't go on forever won't.
Right.
And that's also true for lunch with EFI. So we've already
even though it feels like forever.
So great chat as always, gentlemen. Great to see you.
See you next week.
Yes. Hope you enjoyed lunch with EFI.